Hello, everyone. This is Chet back again with Fight Breakdown. We are looking at UFC 253, aka Fight Island, etc., etc. The main event. Israel Adesanya, the champion, at the 185 weight class versus Paulo Costa, coming from Brazil. Now, this is a heavily hyped fight, and I'm gonna give you my prediction, and of course, substantiated with analysis. This is a relatively new channel, so look forward to your support and engagement. Please leave comments below, especially if you make any money off of this fight betting. And as a result of this video, hey, send me a couple of dollars in the down in the link below. Just kidding, but please donate, support my channel. Uh, now let's just get right into it. Okay, so I've been watching MMA long time. I'm also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu two-stripe blue belt. Okay, so have a little bit of understanding of the ground game. Um, Also, big fan, former boxing. Um, I almost said former boxer. Nope, not former professional boxer, but I did used to box the younger. And my other videos on my channel discuss boxing, judo, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Right, these three things are very passionate about. I love all the fighting arts, but those are the things that I happen to be into. So, what's the deal with this fight right here? Um, See, to the average person on the outside, right? The average person that doesn't really fight, they see a big guy, strong guy, and they figure, okay, that guy, man, he's a monster. He has a physique of Hercules. Okay, he's gonna crush old skinny Adesanya, right? That's a narrative. Listen, Israel Adesanya, right? As cocky as he may be, he's very accurate. Um, Listen, this is not the early days of UFC. Um, where you could just come in with limited skill set and dominate. Your days of the Mark Hammer Colemans, right? You just come big, strong wrestler, throw a guy down, hold him there, and just ground and pound. Or um, Mark Kerr, right? The smashing machine. Those days are over. And I mean, even in the early UFC, listen, Hoist already showed that just being big and strong is not enough. And you would think people would learn that by now, but by 2020, but it's just that, people, tend to follow their emotions sometimes too much and it offsets proper analysis and judgment. So in this video, I hope that I can convince you out there, if you are putting money down or if you're just a fan that, you should go with Adesanya on this fight. And listen, I'm predicting it beforehand. So, I'm standing by the prediction. You could check my other predictions that I made because I just did a video on the Blachowicz Reyes fight. So check that video. I also did a prediction video for the Sean O'Malley Cheeto Vera fight, and called that fight. All right. I also predicted the Covington Tyron Woodley fight, and called that. So like I said, no analysis is going to be 100% perfect because we can't see into the future. But what I do is I try to take all the little pieces, right, all the circumstantial evidence and put it together and try to build a model, right, to predict what the most likely outcome is going to be. Because listen, fighting is like poker, right? There's some chance involved. Anybody could get a lucky punch. There could be like an injury, anything. There's information that you don't know about, right? Fighters could be hurt. They're not gonna let you know, right? The guy's leg, you might find out later on the guy blew his knee out in training or something, but he still went ahead with the fight or something, or he just had a minor injury. So you never know all the information. So when you're analyzing with incomplete information, just like the stock market, is like a certain you only can know so much and just go on percentages and try to stick with that. So first we're gonna look at Costa, okay? And first thing I like to do is, of course, I look at the physical statistics and everything. But what I like to do is compare competition. That tells you a lot, right? Of course, everybody's different, but just the levels of competition tells you a lot. It's just like if I was a baseball player, right? And I've been playing baseball for 5 years, but I've been playing in the major leagues. I've been playing, with the New York Yankees, right? And then there was another guy that came along. He's been playing for 5 years also, but he only played in high school. Okay? Now, which player you think is gonna have a better chance, right? Say playing in, say in another league or whatever like that. So who's gonna probably perform better? You're gonna go with the major leaguer, the guy who already had a proven track record. He has the better. He's faced better pitchers, right? Stiffer competition. So that's very important. The first thing we're gonna look is we're gonna look at Costa's competition. Now I took some notes down. I don't want to forget anything. Look at Paulo Costa, right? So he's 29, young dude, right? He's 6 foot, okay? And he has 13 wins. Now he has out of those 13 wins, he has 11 knockouts. So he doesn't. So he that's impressive, right? He's a knockout artist. So basically, he hits you, you go to sleep, right? He has one submission, one decision. Now, interesting enough, he's training, under the gym of Waleed Ishmael, um, one of the great jiu-jitsu, and actually the first Gracie killer right before Sakuraba in the jiu-jitsu world. And so he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but you don't get a chance to see it. He's just knocking people out. So of course, the downside of knocking everybody out is the fights don't go the distance, and you don't really get to see the stamina, or the gas tank, so to speak. So that's a question mark there. Um, we saw it in the Yoel Romero fight, right? The fighters looked extremely spent at one point. But let's go down and look here at some of the recent fights. So 2019, which was last year, August of 2019, decision over Yoel Romero. Okay, this is a fighter that both fighters they have in common, a common opponent here. And first thing I would like to say is although Romero, great fighter, right? He got into MMA kind of late, and although he's a freak of nature, he is older, 43 years old at this point. When they fought Costa, I think he was like 42 or 41. So, I only could take that with a grain of salt, right? He fought both fighters to decision. The Adesanya Romero fight was a terrible fight. Because what I see Romero tries to do is counter, and also I think he's worried about just getting fatigued. So he got in the ring with Adesanya and basically just stood there. It was a terrible fight. It's hard to look good against him, but nevertheless, he is a beast, and so it's a respectable win. But I don't give it a lot of credit because again, you know, it's just the fact that he's on the downside. As you can see here, Romero's last couple of fights, 4 out of 5 losses, right? But one thing I will say is that out of those losses, he's lost to champions and former champions. So in Robert Whitaker twice, and Adesanya, of course, and Costa coming up. So for Costa to beat him, Costa showed that he belongs in that conversation. But again, like an aging fighter that's kind of on the other side of his career, okay, you can't put too much stock into it. So, okay, that's a common opponent. Uriah Hall, okay? What can I say about Uriah Hall? I mean, he was one of the not original, but he was like an early hype train in his career. He turned out to be a decent fighter. To me, he at this point he's more of like a gatekeeper. Like if you could beat him, you show that okay, you're ready to go to the next level. Perhaps enter into the top 10, right? If you can beat him, right? He's no longer being talked about as a championship caliber fighter as he was before when he was fighting on a contender and things like that and having these highlight reel knockouts. Thing with Hall, he's very dangerous, but he's inconsistent. So that's the thing, and you can't really be champion being inconsistent. So again, looking at Hall, a little older, and Hall went through this streak where again he had like 4 out of 5 losses, but then since then he's come back. He's beat Bevon Lewis, Antonio Carlos Jr. So he showed that, hey, at a certain level, he's gonna win his fights. But when you try to bring him up to the next level, say like a championship level, Uriah Hall is not quite there. All right. So I would mark that as a solid victory for Costa. Nothing spectacular though, right? Just solid victory. To me, here's where it gets bad, right? Oh, and let's point out too, both fights are a year apart. Okay, so now we're going back to 2017 for the third fight. Johnny Hendricks. Do I need to say anything about Johnny Hendricks? Well, only to the person that really doesn't know anything about MMA. Johnny Hendricks, former champion at one time, right? Pretty good fighter. Had some severe weight cutting issues, but again, you can see at the end of his career, Costa beat him, right? Knocked him out. He was already on a terrible, losing 7 out of 10 fights. You see all that red in there. I mean, coming from George St. Pierre, when some people think he was robbed of the title, but nevertheless, that was like the last of his good days. He finally comes back, beats Robbie Lawler for the title, then loses it to Lawler, but he just never, after the I forgot, he had some kind of issues with weight cutting and things like that, and maybe even performance enhancers, but he just was never the same after the George St. Pierre and Robbie Lawler fights. Okay, so yeah, Paulo Costa caught him, just years after his prime, like he, definitely washed up. Um, so that's not the big rig of old that Costa beat. He beat a guy that was just pretty much done. Going to the next fight again, Oluwale Bang Boost. Who? Exactly. We don't know who this is. All right. No disrespect, but we don't know. So again, this guy was 6-4, and again we look at his fight history from 2015. He actually was knocked out by Uriah Hall, and 4 out of 5 losses. He came to the UFC and just got knocked out a couple of times, and that was pretty much it. Costa is on there. So again, the point that I'm showing you these guys for is again to bring up the quality of competition. We don't know who that guy was. The next guy, and this is as far as I'm going back, because now we're in 2017, so going back 3-4 years is too much. Because the next fight, he's in the Jungle Fight series in Brazil. Going back to 2017, he fights Gareth McClellan. Again, we're talking about quality of opposition here. Soldier Boy, Gareth McClellan, 13-7. Again, you just see nothing but red coming up. And from 2015, this guy had lost 5 out of 6. Again, Costa is here. So it just seemed like to me like Costa being like a pretty boy, like Adesanya makes the Ricky Martin references, but the dude kind of has that style about him. Back you remember Ricky Martin back in the early 2000s. He does wear the shiny shirts and all of that, and he has that like disco-y disco-y look about him, so big muscles and all that stuff like that, pretty boy look. So perhaps the UFC might have been trying to like make sure they keep the marketability high with this guy, because you gotta remember, real good looking dude, muscular, has a beach body, and there's a big market in Brazil. So if this guy wins and especially gets the title, I mean, you're opening up a huge fan base down there continuously making those people happy down there. So, this guy, we don't know really these guys are too much, as far as, but we can say that they're not the top tier. They're not even like gatekeepers. These last two, again, Johnny Hendricks was totally done. Uriah Hall, okay, like, again, kind of gatekeeper material right there, and then he beat him. Okay, that's great. And then he goes against Yoel Romero again, older fighter, the end. Nevertheless, very dangerous and defeat him. So Costa did what he had to do to get to this point. Okay, but do I have a lot of faith in as far when I look at the competition, do I say, oh yeah, that's like some stiff competition right there? No, I do not. Now, going to the champion, last style bender, age 31. So the age is a wash. They're like pretty much the same age. Here's a big difference: 6'4", so he has the height, 4 inches. Um, and another thing I want to say about Costa is Costa only has one submission, although he's a black belt, so he's not really dependent on that. We haven't seen his grappling game too much. Okay, back to Adesanya. Um, 19 wins, and out of that 19 wins, he had 14 knockouts. So this dude can throw, man. This do not play. He looks skinny and all of that, and he probably is, but he's wiry, rangy, and the thing is, like he says, he doesn't need the big muscles and everything. He has precision. The dude is precise. He's an assassin, kickboxer, champion. He knows what angles to be at. He knows where his feet should be at, and he has techniques that's gonna compensate for just having big, bulging muscles. Never been submitted. Okay, so that's not a worry for me. Is he gonna just fall into rear naked choke or something, a triangle or something like that, or armbar? All right. He has not been defeated in UFC. Everybody knows that he's been defeated before in kickboxing, but not in the UFC. Let's look at the competition though. This is what's important: the quality of fights. We already talked about Yoel Romero. Okay, so it's first on the list. Common opponent. Both fighters defeated him. And I already talked enough about Romero's age and all that stuff like that being on the downside. Robert Whitaker. We already know who Robert Whitaker is, unless you're like new. Robert Whitaker is former champion, right? Excellent fighter. You can see well-rounded, 9 KOs, 5 submissions, 7 decisions. Again, Adesanya never being subbed. This is a guy that could sub him or have a chance to sub him when they fought. It's a guy also that Adesanya knocked out. And again, you look at Whitaker's resume. Again, coming back beating the young Darren Till. Beat Yoel Romero, the fighter we talked about, 2 times. And I think those 2 fights definitely took something out of him. Defeated Ronaldo Souza. So, again, and now he's going to fight Cannonier. So, again, everybody would agree that Whitaker is great, great fighter, great champion. Right, show a lot of heart. So to me, that is like a big deal that Adesanya knocked him out. Right, that's a big deal to me because Whitaker is a good fighter, and then him coming back and beating the young, hungry Darren Till shows me that Whitaker's also not done yet. Right, he just lost to a better fighter. Checking the next fighter, 2019, Kelvin Gastelum. Again, young dude, 28, short though, right, 5'9". And you can see Kelvin Gastelum has hit like pretty much after this Israel Adesanya fight, man. He's hit like a little speed bump here, losing to Darren Till by submission, and then getting caught in a heel hook by Jack Hermanson, which could happen. I mean, but nevertheless, that's three straight losses. Israel defeating him in that epic title fight. It's one of the great fights that you'll see, one of the great championship fights. And what's interesting about that fight and a little bit concerning for me is that he caught Adesanya in that fight. He hit him. And Adesanya showed great heart and resilience and coming back in that fight and eventually turning the tables on Gastelum, who seemed to gas out, no pun intended, in that fight. And I think that fight went on maybe 5-10 more seconds. Adesanya would have actually stopped Gastelum, but if you remember that fight, he was beating Gastelum down in that 5th round, and then the bell rang. But early in that fight, Gastelum had his chance. He caught Adesanya, rocked him, and I think the tactical mistake Gastelum made is he went in for the wrestling. He went and tried to take him down where he should have probably still been throwing strikes. So what I will say is this: if Costa catches Adesanya like Gastelum caught him, it'd be early night at the office. We know Costa's hitting hard, and carrying more power. So that's is interesting. Nevertheless, Gastelum, uh, quality opponent, but seems recently to kind of tailed off a little bit. Anderson Silva, um, I have to say, not really at this point in his career. Again, he's basically a name and gatekeeper at this point in his career. This is not Anderson Silva from 2006. Okay, so we need to knock that off, right? This is not Anderson Silva that fought Rich Franklin or Chris Lieben, right? This is a different. This is a 45-year-old Anderson Silva who still had enough skills, right, to get by, survive. Good test for like young up and coming fighters. Like I said, more of like a gatekeeper at this point, and no need to look into this Anderson Silva's resume. Nevertheless, he defeated him. To me, it would have been more of a statement if he actually KO'd Silva, but Silva's a crafty fighter, and he beat him, decisive enough as he should. Next fight going back, still 2018, is Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson, again, to me, falls into that gatekeeper category. I wouldn't like discuss him in like title contention, but if you beat him, it's kind of like okay, then you become um, eligible for that discussion of being in the top 10, so on and so forth. And Derek Brunson showed me that after his loss to Adesanya, he came back and he's beat some decent fighters. And he derailed Edmund Shabazian, which, one of those fighters that people were talking about, hey, this guy, Adesanya better watch out for him coming up. And I saw that fight, and he dominated Shabazian. He made some adjustments, and he shut him down. Derek Brunson did a great job, and he basically sent Shabazian, back to the lab. He has to reconfigure some aspects in this game. He exposed some things, and so he showed that he wasn't done after fighting Israel Adesanya. So to me, that even raises Israel Adesanya stock even more because it shows that he's not just fighting. He's not fighting like washed up fighters, right? Derek Brunson is not done, right? Anderson Silva again, more gatekeeper status. Gastelum again, young dude. Whitaker, young guy, not done. Yoel Romero. So again, when we compare these fighters, right? I'm sorry, when we compare the competition, right? We have Yoel Romero, who's a shared opponent, right? Let me just jot this down real quick, um, because I want to make a comparison side by side between Adesanya's competitors and the Eraser, his competitors, and then you could decide for yourself who had the better competition. But to me, it's easily no brainer that that Adesanya had the tougher competition. So again, Yoel Romero is a wash. They both fought and defeated Yoel Romero. Then you have Uriah Hall, who Costa fought, and Robert Whitaker, who Adesanya fought. Okay, I'm going with Whitaker on that one. Then you have Johnny Hendricks. Again, I said he was done by that. If you don't believe me, all you gotta do is look at all of this red right here. He was done at this point, right? Because the losses started in about 2014, and Costa fought him in 2017. So I mean, he had already, he was done by then. So again, we have Kelvin Gastelum, who Adesanya fought versus say like a Johnny Hendricks. Again, Adesanya fought Anderson Silva and Derek Brunson respectively. Whereas Costa's fights Oluwale Bamgaboose and Gareth McClellan. So the competition to me is like, to me that's like a big red flag. The big red flag that shows all the signs of a protected fighter being brought along very slowly. There's nothing wrong with that, especially when you're trying to make money. Um, off a fighter, especially the fight is exciting, etc., etc. So my prediction. Oh, another thing I want to tell you is the fight odds. So Adesanya, this is according to USA Today. Of course, depending on which betting platform you use, the odds might be slightly different. But according to USA Today, the odds Adesanya is a minus 182 favorite against Costa, who's plus 150 underdog. And to me, that's pretty accurate. That falls in line with my prediction that Adesanya is gonna win this fight. Um, it's too much. It's too much skills in the arsenal. Again, we haven't seen a jiu-jitsu or takedown attempts from Costa. Maybe he'll try to bring it to the ground or try to get there, but I can't see him switching up his whole game for the one fight. He's gonna go with what brought him to the dance, so to speak. Um, so as far as the striking is concerned, I don't see Costa being able to um, beat Adesanya on the feet in that department. Um, Now, does he hit harder than Adesanya? He probably does. More, though, with more power, yes. However, there's a price to pay with throwing with more power, punching hard, right? Knocking out everybody, right? So you're not necessarily going the distance, right? All the time. So I see Costa coming in again, trying to quote unquote erase Adesanya, coming in with a lot of power, a lot of muscle, right? And yes, he's gonna be dangerous in the first couple of rounds. But I see Adesanya using his skill, angles, using that kickboxing, touching Costa. Costa getting frustrated, charging in more. He might even try to wrestle at some point. But I think by the time he tries to switch over to the grappling aspect, he's gonna be too tired. And I think Adesanya is actually gonna get stronger as the fight goes on. And I'm predicting a late knockout, actually, by Adesanya to stop Costa in the fourth or fifth rounds. Because Costa's going to be very strong first two rounds or so. Um, I can see a late knockout, um, him being stopped. Because to me, the level of competition is too big of a disparity there. So therefore, I feel like the level of Adesanya is too much for Costa. And Costa's gonna learn a big lesson that he's gonna come in just trying to be like the bully and just get picked apart. I think this actually gonna be a um, pretty easy fight for Adesanya. I think once he steps in the ring, Costa steps in the ring and Adesanya, and they actually start going, he's gonna find Adesanya very difficult to hit, difficult to reach. Just missing big shots, losing energy, etc., etc. And so that's it. So if I was betting, like I said, I'm just going with Adesanya and just collecting that money. Putting $182 down, whatever. Get that plus the 100, and going with that. So I would love to hear what you guys think about that. Um, Again, please support my channel. The links below is a relatively new channel, just trying to get started. And please check out my other fight videos online. And I'll see you guys soon. I'm going to be looking at some more fights from this card, man. I'm so excited about later on. So talk to you guys later.